CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 4, Part 25. Audio by Rini Matthew. Children were sent to other parts of the world to study and bring back new ideas, but children brought about ideas which also led to the development of leading republicans, which contributed to the functioning of a strengthened government. The Chinese also borrowed Japanese translations of European words such as justice, rights and revolution. Till then they were not having exposure or access to these words. So they brought translations of these words which helped them understand these words better, because they use the same ideographic script, a reversal of the traditional relationship. So they always used their own script and they were not very familiar with how it was written in the European script. So this is how they started breaking from their traditional method. So when you break from your traditional method, it does not mean that you are completely saying a no to it. It was a combination of both the traditional method, a reversal of the traditional relationship, in fact. That is the right way of telling it. In 1905, just after the Russo-Japanese War, that was a war fought on Chinese soil and over Chinese territory. The centuries-old Chinese examination system gave candidates entry into the elite ruling class was abolished. So Russo-Japanese War happened. It was a war which was fought on Chinese soil and Chinese territory. The centuries-old Chinese examination system, there was a system which allowed the candidates to enter into the elite ruling class. That was abolished. Why should you enter the elite ruling class? And only access to certain students were given. So that was completely abolished. The examination system entry to the elite ruling class, about 1.1 million till 1850, had been largely through an examination. So if you had to enter the elite ruling class, it was done through an examination. This required writing an 8-legged essay, Pakuwen, in classical Chinese. You had to just write this essay and then you get the entry in a prescribed form. It was not very easy as it sounds. The examination was held twice every 3 years. Twice every 3 years, the examination will be held and they will get an entry into it at different levels. And of those allowed to sit, only 1 to 2% passed the first level. Only 1 or 2% passed the first level. It was very difficult. And usually by the age of 24, to become what was called beautiful talent. So it was called as a beautiful talent to pass this exam and enter the elite ruling class. So that was the kind of system that they followed in those days. At any given time before 1850, there were about 526,869 civil and 212,330 military provincial Shen Guan degree holders in the whole country. Many people had given importance to military provincial and they also got their degrees. So what will they do with these people? Because so many people were getting graduated in this particular degree. And there were only 27,000 official positions, the same thing that we have in India. So many people are passing every day from the university and colleges, but the position that we have, official positions that we have for government jobs, is very less, even for the others. Many lower level degree holders did not have jobs. Many of them did not have jobs. The examination actually acted as a big obstacle to the development of science and technology, because it only wanted literary skills. It did not give much importance to science and technology. So you will not have this logical and rational thinking there. In 1905, it was abolished. This particular system was abolished because it was based on skills which they wanted in Chinese script, Chinese learning. So it was felt no relevance for the modern world, because when you write an essay in the Chinese script and Chinese style with a prescribed form, how will it contribute to the science and technology? That was a major question that the reformers and thinkers posed. Now the next segment is establishing the republic. The Manchu Empire was overthrown, that was the previous empire, and a republic established in 1911. Under whom? Sun Yat-sen. Very important segment in the history of China, 1866 to 1905. and he is unanimously regarded as the founder of modern China. He was the founder of modern China, Sun Yat-sen, very important personality. Now, when you look at the background of this ruler or of this personality, he came from a very poor family and he studied in missionary schools, and he was introduced to the ideas of democracy and Christianity. So this kind of shaping was done even from his childhood, that is, introducing to democracy and Christianity. He studied medicine, but he was greatly concerned about the fate of China. Even after studying medicine, he thought, what I will do with medicine, because China did not encourage any science or technology. So his program was called the Three Principles, Sa Min Chui. He was the first person to introduce this program called Three Principles. Now, what were these principles? Nationalism. This meant you have to overthrow the existing empire Manchu, who were seen as a foreign dynasty. Manchu was a combination of the foreigners as well as the foreign imperialists. First is to overthrow the foreign control. Democracy, and then establishing a democratic government. First overthrow the foreign things and then establish your own democratic government. And socialism, which regulated capital and equalizing land holdings. It had to regulate capital and also equalize land holdings, means they should not give more priority to the richer people. Land will have to be equally distributed, which regulated the capital. So that was the first point, nationalism. Okay? The social and political situation continued to be unstable in spite of all these things. I told you that they had to overthrow the Manchu dynasty, then establish the foreign imperialist, throw them also, then establish this democratic government, and socialism, regulating capital and equalizing land holding. So these were the 3 points, the 3 principles. Okay, very important point. Please put a mark against the textbook that you're following. It is a very assured portion to be asked for your examination. Okay, so social and political situation continued to be unstable in spite of all these 3 principles. On 4th May 1919, an angry demonstration was held in Beijing. People started revolting. They protested against the decisions of the post-war peace conference. There was a peace conference which was held after the war, so people were against that. Despite being an ally of the victorious side, so they joined the Britishers in the war, and of course they emerged victorious because they had a connection with the Britishers by now. And being victorious, in spite of being victorious, China did not get back the territories seized from it. Many territories were promised by the Britishers to be given back, but it did not. China was not able to seize it back. So that's why the protest became a very big movement. They were not able to get their territories back in spite of emerging victorious. It galvanized a whole generation. It gave a new form, a covering to the whole generation. So the whole generation said, we have to attack tradition. It was becoming more prominent. You should understand that many reformers and philosophers were saying a no to old tradition, but it was not sternly followed. It continued to be very unstable. When you give rise to a new idea, it will take a long time for these ideas to be established. Okay, so they started attacking tradition. They called for saving China through modern science, democracy and nationalism. They said, now we have to set the roots for science. We have to set the roots for democracy. We have to set the roots for nationalism, and that is how we are going to overthrow the old and wrong traditional beliefs. Revolutionaries were very strong. They called for driving out the foreigners. Remember the 3 principles by Sun Yat-sen? By the way, this is the picture of Sun Yat-sen. I forgot to mention that. So now the revolutionaries called for driving out the foreigners. They were controlling the country's resources, which was not a very good point, to remove inequalities and reduce poverty. They drove away the foreigners so that they will not have any more of inequalities. They will not continue to have this poverty and all these things. So when the foreigners were there, power was vested in the hands of very few people. They wanted to remove this inequality and reduce the poverty. They of course advocated reforms such as the use of simple language in writing. They wanted to use simple language in writing, abolishing the practice of foot binding and the subordination of women, equality in marriage, and economic development to end poverty. So equality means a lot of things. It is like simple language in writing instead of the complicated script that they used. Abolished the practice of foot binding. Subordination of women was not allowed anymore. There had to be equality in marriage. Economic development had to be focused, which was of course an essential and basic point for ending poverty in the country. So they understood all these things. They wanted to give equality from then itself. So after the Republican Revolution in the country went through a new phase, that is, they entered a period of turmoil. Again, after all these principles, they entered a turmoil. It is very easy for anybody to get upset when they try to do something. Again, there's a turmoil, but they did not. They just kept at it. The Kuomintang, that is a National People's Party, and the Chinese Communist Party, both of them together, emerged as major forces. And it strived, it really pushed the country to unite the country and bring stability. In spite of all these loopholes, the CCCP, that is the Chinese Communist Party, did not go and sit in one corner and say we cannot do anything. They joined hands with the National People's Party, that is Kuomintang, and they wanted to just meet their target, just meet their objective, that is to unite the country and bring stability. Sun Yat-sen's ideas became the basis of the political philosophy of the Kuomintang. Kuomintang people started establishing ideas which they got from Sun Yat-sen, the founder of modern China. They identified 4 great needs. The word need is different from the word want. Want is something which you want in surplus. It's not your need. Need is something which you're in urgent requirement of. So 4 great needs in order to abolish this inequality was to give enough clothing, then food, then housing and transportation. If all these basic necessities are met in the country for everybody equally, then half of the problem is solved. Clothing, food, housing and transportation. Everybody should have enough clothing, that is the need, not in surplus. Food to eat 3 times a day. Then of course a proper decent shelter and transportation. So after the death of Sun, Chiang Kai-shek emerged as a leader of Kuomintang, and he launched a military campaign to control the warlords. He did not encourage all these unnecessary war and everything. So he launched a campaign to control the warlords, regional leaders who had usurped authority, and to eliminate the communists. He just wanted to eliminate the communists. He wanted to control the warlords, the regional leaders, by usurping the authority and by eliminating the communists. So this is something which they launched the military campaigns. Then he advocated a secular and rational, this worldly Confucianism. The first step was to set up a secular and rational, this worldly, there is something which is apt for the present world, Confucianism, but also sought to militarize the nation. Because he was of that military background. If you look at his clothes itself, he belonged to that particular style. So he wanted to set up, militarize the nation, and he wanted to advocate secular and rational thoughts also. The people, he said, must develop a habit, an instinct for unified behavior. Everybody should have that instinct for unified behavior. Don't behave in different ways. He encouraged women to cultivate the 4 virtues. He asked women to cultivate these 4 virtues of chastity, appearance, speech and work, and also to give importance to their role as confined to the household. Even the length of hemlines was prescribed. So he wanted them to be in the house itself. It was becoming more conservative. The Kuomintang social base was in urban areas. They started setting up towns and everything in urban areas, which led to industrial growth, trade and commerce. But still industrialization was slow and unlimited because they went and set up everything in the urban areas. There were cities such as Shanghai, which became the centers of modern growth, and by 1919 an industrial working class had appeared numbering 500,000. So in Shanghai itself, a working class emerged, numbering 500,000. So from then itself, Shanghai was very important as a major industrial working place, and now it has just developed by no leap and bounds. But still only few people were employed, a very important point. You should remember that many people lost their jobs because of all these very strict measures, though it was really good. It developed a lot in the economy, but only few people were employed.